All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophie, an artist liaison with Lumen Prize, and I want to give a few more minutes, make sure more people can join. But welcome back to our talk series with our 2020 Lumen artists who've won our 2020 award cycle. This is presented in conjunction with our winners exhibition, which was designed in partnership with Leonardo, International Society for the Arts, Sciences, and Technology. They're based out of Arizona State University, one of the largest research universities in the US, and they work to publish articles on tech, arts, and sciences, working to change the outlook of higher education. And we are the Lumen Prize, which began in 2012, and we've been handing out awards to an international group of artists, growing community on the field of art and tech. And today we have two artists with us, one who cannot actually join us, but we do have one live artist with us, Casey Reas and Tupac Martir. Will share a little bit about their practice and about the works that they won the Lumen Prize Award for. So I would like to start by introducing a video sent in by Casey Reas. He is an LA-based software artist whose career spans over 20 years in the field. He's a pioneer, definitely in the field of art and technology. And I will share my screen, and I hope you enjoy his video. He won our award for Moving Image for his work Compressed Cinema, which is a series of digital manipulations. Let me share my screen. I hope this works. And let me know that it's working. All right.
Hello, I'm Casey, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the compressed cinema digital videos that I created in collaboration with Jan St. Werner. I think this short presentation is it's a bit weird, actually, because it is very informal. I'm sitting here in my studio in Inglewood, which is a city, surrounded by Los Angeles. It's like 3 p.m. on December 21st. So instead of doing this live, we made the decision to pre-record it. So it's very casual and informal. I can hear some people working like on the other side of the building. Hopefully that won't come through. But at the same time, it's also like overly formal too, because I decided I'm going to read a little bit from a text and improvise an ad lib in there as well. And then I'm later going to put this together with hopefully split screen with some of the compressed cinema videos, so you can have some visuals to go along with. And hopefully I'm going to try and put the sound in there at a low volume too, so you can hear a little bit of that. These works were made entirely to be image and sound pairing together. They're both of equal importance, not one above the other. And so it's a bit strange to show them in this way, but I hope that you can visit the exhibition and you can get a sense for what these works feel like when the audio and the image are working together. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and begin. So these videos are created in the tradition of experimental films that use existing films as raw material, so that they manipulate and modify existing films to create something new. The compressed cinema videos are very much an inversion of Ken Jacobs' 1969 film, Tom Tom the Piper's Son, which expands a short 1905 film of the same name, Tom Tom the Piper's Son, from its original running time of 8 minutes to 115 minutes. So Jacobs did that through meticulous rephotography, through repetition, through scaling, through editing. And in contrast, each compressed cinema video distills a feature-length film into a work of less than 10 minutes. I think the shortest is about 4 minutes long. A compressed cinema video is a complete reimagining of a film, also, like Jacob's films, through a process of transformation and editing. So the collection of 5 videos, 3 of which are streaming in the Lumen exhibition, they took about 2 years to make from beginning to end. And it was a long process of experimentation and developing a new way of creating time-based media and developing new techniques for working with cinematic media through working with GANs, generative adversarial networks. Each of these 5 videos was created from a carefully trained compressed cinema GAN model. Some of the videos utilize conventional editing techniques, and others are created entirely from a continuous flow of images that are really only possible to realize through working with GANs. Unlike editing a film or video, where I might have a fixed set of frames that were pre-captured to work with, a compressed cinema model contains an indeterminate number of unique images within the GAN's latent space. So the latent space is a microworld of potential images to be explored. And each finished video is a narrow path through those many options. So the latent space is a multidimensional space. Through a sequence of numbers called the latent vector, I can select one location within that latent space and generate an image. By changing the numbers, I can generate a different image. By changing the numbers even more, it'll generate an image of a very different quality. So unlike working with a camera, where you capture images from the world and you have a fixed set of images, the latent space of a GAN model is a continuous fluid space. Slight changes can make an image that's slightly different. Larger changes can make an image that is more different. So it's finite in terms of the images that it can produce, but it's really fluid in how one image can flow into another. So the process of making each one of these videos starts by training the model. And this is done by extracting each frame from an existing film. The frames are cropped differently to create a set of more heterogeneous images for the training data. So every frame of a film is extracted. Each one is cropped a little bit differently in order to create more difference in the images. So the model is trained over a period of 2 to 4 weeks on a computer sitting in the corner of my studio, and a grid of images that you could think of it as like a contact sheet is generated every few minutes so that the process of training the model can be monitored. Once the model is trained, thousands of images are generated so that we can see what's in the latent space of that model. And if I don't like what's there, I modify the training data and then train again. And for some of these videos, went through multiple iterations of the training, each one taking two weeks to a month. And then some films just never worked out. Some of the original films that were selected were eventually abandoned and not used. So once the model is finished training, again, thousands of images are generated from randomized positions within the latent space. And individual images then became seeds for discovering more images within that area. So you can think about an image being found that's like a point within this multidimensional space, and then the values are changed to see other images within that area. I think to make a comparison to photography, it's similar to moving through a large stack of contact sheets, but then in the end with GANs, we don't have to be satisfied with what's on the contact sheets. We can look at images that are nearby that, or an image that's in between two different images that we see. And so from these thousands of images, it's curated to hundreds of images, and then finally to about 100. From that process, it's edited even further and distilled into a few dozen images that become the storyboard for each one of these videos. So from here, that was the beginning of a new step and the end of the step of training the GANs and selecting those images. We spent time writing custom code in order to generate images of sequence in unique ways. So we developed a custom data format that lists each latent vector for each frame in the storyboard. We developed different kinds of transitions, ways of moving from one image to another. And then this custom data format also specified how many images that we wanted to move between from getting from image A to image B. Is it 12 images at 12 frames per second? Is it 90 images at 60 frames per second? And from there, we were able to pull and push and compress time in different ways in making each one of these videos. So this process repeats many times. We look at lots of different edits. We made corrections until eventually we had the ability to generate each frame of the final video. So after each frame was generated, we needed to go through another set of transformations to upscale them to video resolution. So GANs, in the years that these videos were made, it's up to 3 years ago now, some of them were only capable of generating images that were 64 by 64 pixels. Very, very small in 2020 standards. And so we developed ways of scaling them, filtering them, and color correcting them so that they produce the final video frames that you see. By the end of our process and learning and working, we were finally able to produce images that were 512 by 512 pixels. And so videos 3 through 5 have a different quality than videos 1 and 2. So to say a little bit about why GANs or what GANs do, I just want to say that they don't see the way that we do. And for me, that's one of maybe my major interest in working with GANs, that it's an unfiltered way of seeing. So a GAN can coalesce different patterns and textures into images. They see these different, numerical patterns during the training, and they can aggregate them into images that feel coherent to us. But the GAN doesn't filter them the way that our conscious and unconscious vision filter things for us. So the GAN doesn't know that something's a face or that something's a table the way that when we look at images, we immediately filter through and sort out. So without these kinds of filters, GANs can create images that are unlike images that we've seen in the history of art, or unlike things that we capture with a camera, or unlike things that we might draw consciously or unconsciously. The words that people often use to refer to these GAN-generated images are the language that I use as well, things like uncanny or weird or dreamlike. And it was originally those qualities that led me to begin working with GANs and that led to the origins of these videos. So some of the images within each of these compressed cinema models are representational, and they vary very, very little from the source material. Those sections of the latent space weren't used. Some of the images are completely abstract and noisy, and others are hybrids. You can sort of contain representation and complete abstraction within a single image field. So each of the videos that comprise the series have a really different texture and atmosphere. And these were coaxed from the latent space of each of these models. And each one has a distinct method of editing and a distinct quality to them based on how I was reacting and responding to that source material from the training. So each compressed cinema video is a collaboration between myself and Jan St. Werner. I created the video images and then handed those off to Jan, and then Jan cut the audio to match the image. One thing that we had agreed to was that Jan would be using his tools that he had developed for Spectric Acid, one of his recent albums, and that would form the sonic language for the film. We feel very much that the image and sound are equally important for experiencing the videos. There's no hierarchy there, as there often is in video work. And that sometimes the audio takes the lead, sometimes the image. There's this idea that's a bit vague that sometimes the image acts as sound and vice versa. And then I also want to say that the technical work for these videos, our technical lead was Heyman Cho. And we worked together for 2 years in my studio developing the new software tools that were used for moving through the latent space and dynamic editing of these videos, and then also building on top of the existing source code for DC GAN and progressive growing of GANs for doing the training and working with these images. So that's what I wanted to say about the videos. Sophie had asked me to answer a few questions. And so I guess to stimulate the idea of the Q&A, I haven't thought about answers to these, but I did pick them from a longer list. So let's see what's the first. Do you create your work with a specific audience in mind? I think that's a good question that I don't really have a good answer to. Or maybe my answer, anyway, the way that I think about that is that I really make the work that I want to experience. So I think the specific audience is myself. With the idea being that I make work, I put work into the world. Fuzzy ideas sort of become more coherent and then get produced as media, really so that I can experience what I'm imagining. And that is my specific audience. It's an audience really of one, but I do really care about how other people experience the work. So I would say it starts with that. And everything about the works are made, I would say, following what I feel is my singular vision of how the work should be made. But I mean, I'm always taking in different influences continuously, from music, from cinema, to painting and drawing, to theater. You know, all the influences come in, I would say, kind of like specifically hone my ideas about what I want to make and what I want to produce. All right, the next question. How do you situate fear within the genre of art and tech? I think for me, an experience of fear, or I could kind of think about that as horror, the genre of horror, is something that I experience less in all of art, really. Maybe in cinema, that's where there is more of that. I think it's even more rare, possibly within whatever we vaguely define as art and tech. I think there's a lot to be afraid of right now. And for me, really, since 2016, my own shift in thinking, my own memories have been moving into that space. And some of these works, that was on my mind when I was producing it. You know, things like the cinema of David Cronenberg or some of the paintings of Goya, those were on my mind while I was producing this work. Okay. How has your work evolved over the years of your practice? And how does compressed cinema situate itself within that evolution? So I think very much of my practice relating and being intrinsically tied to the history of the visual arts. And so I would say the work that I was doing about 20 years ago had a really strong influence from my interests in drawing and painting, and also my interests in artificial life, which, you know, the offshoot or branch of artificial intelligence, dealing and working with behavior. And so my early work was very much about that. I think the compressed cinema for me is my approach to cinema and cinematic media. Something that I've been, you know, consuming and thinking about really the entire time, but hasn't found its way into my work. So I would say it has been over the last 5 years, my work has been moving more into that space. And I think part of that is working with the scale of a cinematic image in relationship to my scale, and also thinking very much about sound. And something that has nothing to do with my earlier work is thinking about editing. I think the earlier work very much is sort of slow in time and moves and changes very little in time. It's not limited to a certain time scale. It's software work, and it's meant to change slowly, kind of continuously, unfolding over many, many hours, but without any form, or without any drama or major changes. And so I think for me, that's one thing that cinema brings, is thinking about time in a different way, and also having a much stronger focus on the audio domain. So this is the last question. What draws you to software art, to video art? What does moving image allow that perhaps other mediums do not? For me, it's about time. For some reason, I just really feel that time is essential for my work and my ideas. And that's what software provides for me. It provides a longer scale of time, works that can run for weeks on end. And it's a different way of thinking about the short amount of time that you might for a highly edited video. So I think, as I mentioned just a moment ago, working with video was really for the first time for the last 5 years, after years of working only in software and in paper-based media. It's allowed me to think about time in a way that I hadn't before. And that's one thing that's been really exciting to me. And then also as the coupling of image and sound into a much tighter, coherent experience. Okay, so that was a bit of meandering over some questions and an introduction to the compressed cinema works. I hope you can visit the exhibition and see the works and have the image sound experience. All right, bye.
All right, the exhibition link is shared in the chat, so definitely save that to check out at a later point. And I do wish Casey could be here to ask more questions, because I know a few of you have some, and I do as well, but I would like to introduce our next artist, Tupac Martir, who was awarded a Lumen Prize along with Sator Studios for his work, The Cosmos Within Us, which is a VR live performance piece, which he will go more in detail into in a moment. So I'm gonna pin your video and take it away.
Let's do the classic. Here we go. That one. Share sound. Video clip. Share. All right. My favorite phrase of this year. Can you see my screen?
You're good.
Perfect. Right. So really quickly, I'm gonna put my timer just because I am very aware of time. There we go. So we always have a joke in the studio that this is how we do things. I'm very Mexican, as people know. Eduardo Galeano is one of my favorite writers. This phrase encompasses what studio is, encompasses our design and I would say philosophy, that nothing is there for the sake of being. Everything is there for a reason, everything is there for a purpose. And an artist is as important as the engine, the graphics card, because all of them actually give the piece a way of being portrayed, but also they're almost doing the same thing. So it's very, very important for us to know that the way that we understand things is directly communicated through the technology. My opera prima was Nieka, which was in 2012, which is considered the first moment in which tracking is actually being used in the world. Because of that, now we have a lot of BEPs, a lot of stuff with Universal, Disney. So basically, this is the moment that a lot of things change for a lot of people. That exploration with dance and movement and projection mapping has been really well known and documented. This is a piece that we did in Mexico on a 100 meter by 42 meter projection, in which I didn't want to just make a projection mapping, but I wanted to tell an entire story with movement and motion capture. That has actually translated into a piece that has been 2.5 years on the making. And to be honest, I have no idea when I'm going to finish it, but it's still moving and still getting there. And then a lot of the things that we do, you can see movement and and dance is very particular to what I do, especially in this kinds of pieces like the one that we did at the Saatchi Gallery. What does this bring us to? It brings us to what we call Cosmos Within Us. Cosmos Within Us is the first performative art. Is a term that didn't exist. It's a term that we made ourselves because we needed to understand what exactly we're doing. Performative art means a performance that happens in different realities. Back in October 2017, we went to VR Days with an idea in mind, and they were really keen to give us 4 actors, and we kind of wrote something that we thought could make for a bit of a story, had 4 actors, worked it around, did about 35 minutes of a kind of like a reading workshop, and from there we continued. The following day, we grabbed some of the bits that we liked the most out of our writing, and then stuck a person in a headset. We had a dancer on a motion capture, we had the live musicians, our live actors, myself in the middle directing the piece, and then you can see the screenshot of what was going to be used at the time, which was Notch. That is the beginning of the Dome of Memories. It was really funny because as soon as we started doing this, which was in a single day, what we call proof of concept, it became very evident that we were walking into something that was very interesting. Obviously, things like Draw Me Close or Alice had already debuted earlier that year at Venice, and we understood that there's something about performance that could be drawn. But one of the things that I was really interested about was what was happening behind the performance. So we did our entire proof of concept with an audience, knowing that we actually wanted to bring an audience to the piece. So with that in mind, we went in and started doing some R&D.
Memory is all we are. A vast moments that define us. Everything that shaped our existence. But my own memory is fracturing. Inside this corrosive and degenerative brain, there are holes now. Please, make this stop. I want to remember. I'm becoming nothing.
Once we finished all that, we started the exploration of what I wanted to do. So I knew I wanted to play with size and volume. I know that I wanted to understand what all this 16:9 and 4:3 content and how it could be introduced into the piece. All these memories, I knew I didn't want them to just get them from stock. So we decided to cast 2 couples of children, 8 and 4, and 12 and 8. And we followed them every 3 months. We would go to the beach, we would go to the farm, we would go to a house, and we would create things so we could actually create memories with them, because I wanted to make it very, very cinematic. I wanted it to be something that was actually believable. And through the process, the children actually became very much like family. I knew that I wanted to explore theater. I knew I wanted to bring some of those elements back into the mix. But I also wanted to do it in my way, which was a bit of an homage to Pablo Almodovar in the sense of a movie within a movie, or the surrealistic elements of Peter Greenwood. Trying to understand elements of it that I wanted to bring into the story. Having 2 dads, 2 moms, movement, a bit of Wes Anderson in terms of how do you understand 360 film. It was very important for us to create new techniques. It was very important for us to find new ways of telling the story, only for one reason, and that is I didn't want to copy anybody. I knew that I had something in my hands as I was developing the story that would allow me the opportunity to delve into all these techniques and try to find new ways of doing it. And when I say that, it's everyone that's seen Cosmos knows that every single possible technique under the sun was in this, photogrammetry, volumetric, mocap, face cap, all those kinds of things we were using. And the reasons for it, the reason that I didn't have to concord to a single aesthetic or technique was because I was talking about memories. I was talking about an old man who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease and is trying to hold on to his last memories. And that gave me the opportunity to play around with the entire scope of what I was trying to do. And so we decided to draw a line and put a curve inside of it. So each one of the scenes sits in different parts of the curve. Anything that is above that line, the further up it goes, it becomes more real. The further down it goes, it becomes more surreal. And we started creating laws of color palettes or elements of how can a smell above the line had to be very real. It had to smell like grass. It had to smell like something was decaying. Whereas anything underneath the curve had to be more surreal. What is the smell of childhood? Bubblegum, apparently. And so we started breaking molecules, and we started looking for ways of breaking these elements that human beings tend to have when you start watching. How are your memories? How do you remember your world? How do you remember your life? So we were very lucky to stumble upon many of these things, because that's the truth. We are stumbled by trying and training and practicing and seeing how it worked. This is one of my favorite scenes, and you can see our interactor is having a cookie and a juice box. And there's nothing funnier than to see a human being, because all your life you've been told that what you see on that screen is untouchable. And the moment that there's a juice box and you stick your hand out and there's a juice box waiting for you and you bring it in and you start drinking, your brain is actually generating brand new connections between the back and the front, because you've never had it before, and then you add the smell of the grandmother and the smell of the vanilla and all these little molecules that are being spread, and it just becomes a brand new way of sensation. At the back, you can see a little bit of our audience, because that's what makes Cosmos very interesting, is that we are doing everything and we're performing everything for everybody. The musicians are live. I conduct the piece live. You can see to the right, there's Mark, who runs the visuals in real time. A bit to his left in here, you can see Hugh and you can see Steve. To the right is John, who runs the sound engine. Our sound engineers on the other side, because all the sound that we're generating from my voiceover, from musicians, all has to be mixed in a Dante network for all of us to listen to. But at the same time, it has to be sent to our sound designer, who's then putting it into an 11.2 surround sound system and also into the headphones. The headphones are open headphones, which means you can have something that is happening on the environmental layer, then comes to your ear, goes to your other ear, and goes back to the environmental layer. So all of a sudden, you're surrounded by these sounds. So the combination of the sound, the smell, being able to hear something in your ears while at the same time listening to something of the outside world gives that that distinction, because that's the way that we hear. That's the way that we are in the world. And so, when we started the piece in Venice, we had 4 people in the audience. And then we moved to Rain Dance and we had 10 people. And then we went to the film museum in the Eye in Amsterdam, and we had 114. And then eventually when we came to New York, we had 150 people in the audience. We had to add cameras because there were angles that the people couldn't see. There were reactions that we couldn't see, and it was very important for us, for the audience, to see what was going on. So in the screen, you get to see what our interactor is going through. Every single person in the audience gets a pair of headphones, and they're surrounded by the environmental layers. So you're listening to what he's listening, you're seeing what he's seeing. The only difference is you're seeing, your reality is a physical reality that allows you to see everything that is going on, while his reality is a virtual reality. Everyone knows now how to use these things. So if you have a phone, please stick your phone out and you'll see Aiken's room. And then, here's a second image and you can see the forest. And the forest is where you're going to see our good friend Bob when we were in New York. So our 2 interactors, our 2 shadow dancers are in charge of taste, touch, and smell. So they are moving around and giving you the breeze, and you can smell the fresh hot grass that moving, the dragon when it comes out, and the sun, and everything becomes very vivid, and you really believe that you are in that space. arts, with all your presentations being putting you there. We won Rain Dance. We also won the VR Days. We were nominated for a Production Guild of Award of America for innovation. We obviously just won the Lumen Prize. We have all these beautiful things that have come out of it, and you know, we're super excited about what performative art will eventually be, and how other people will eventually implement into the workflow. And for those that haven't seen much of it, here's a little bit of it.
And then I remembered. Memory is all we are.
Yeah, coming to a city near you, that's the hope. Unfortunately, when pandemic hit, our entire tour got cancelled. So we're hoping that 2021 will be the year we'll be able to take Cosmos around the world and for people to actually experience it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope it comes to my city. I will be anxiously waiting for that day. We did have a few questions that were messaged to me, as well as the questions that I sent to you before. One question, if you're ready, is once the world comes back to normal, do you think cinema or performance venues will be eager for this kind of experimental theater? And if so, what kind of venues?
I mean, even before pandemic, people were excited to have this. The ambition, right, that I'm currently in Lisbon, and theaters are open here, so I've been to the ballet twice already. But I think that there's appetite for this type of thing. I remember when we finished a show in New York, someone asked me what was it exactly for them, and someone said it's theater for esports fans, you know, because someone in VR is actually driving the story, and so I think the fact of the combination of elements, the story is very tough. I gotta admit it. You know, the way that it's written, Ben Farry did an amazing job writing the story and writing the dialogue, which unfortunately it will hit hard to a lot of people because of everything that we've gone through. I think that theaters and cinemas, and you know, the beautiful thing about what we've done with it is every time we've presented it, it's always been in a very different type of venue. So we're very flexible in how we set around and how we present it and how we come to people and how we allow them to watch it. So yeah, the hope is that we can actually go out on tour and take it to different places next year, or for a few years, if in the biggest hope.
Thank you. I think that also goes on with another question I had, which, and obviously this is the challenge of showing it, but what exactly would you highlight as maybe the biggest challenge in the process of creating? It seems like it was kind of a trial-based kind of.
Oh my God, it was a nightmare. A lot of it lived in my head, and then slowly, you know, this is what we have, a lot of drawings and a lot of things, so we can actually drop it to people and understand it. But in my head, I had a very good understanding of, as we were developing the scenes, we were developing the soundtrack, and we were developing the story. So we knew that like that scene needed to have this elements and need to work this way, we need to go that way. But then you're working with the smell and you're trying to go in the right, well, what does this smell like? And Nicola will give us different molecules, and you had to put yourself into the head of what you were seeing and what kind of smell actually worked with it. And then you would go and say, right, yeah, that, oh, that smells really nice. What is it? Oh, it's this. And it's like, Ben, yeah, you gotta write like a little thing that says this element into it. And so that, it was like a massive Rubik's Cube that seems to be in the wrong place every single time, and then eventually you just go and you kind of fit it all together. And the nicest bit about it is we did 132 official shows in Venice, plus previews and rehearsals. So by the time we finished Venice, we probably had done about 150 shows. Then we went to London and we did another 75. So we've performed this piece now over 200 times. And to see the evolution, to see how shows vary from one to the other, gives you a little bit of there's a moment for the dragon that literally happened and we came up with it, how it needed to exist, probably a day before we opened. Because we realized that, there's a moment in Aiken's room where if you go to the window, there's literally someone waiting for you with 2 fans like this, for you to get closer to it so you can feel the wind coming through the window. Like there's a lot of those little details that we started adding as we were developing the piece and understanding the piece. Originally we had trackers on people, and then after doing some from proof of concept or testing back in April, we realized that actually the trackers were a wrong thing, because although they added so much in one scene, it made people think that they had missed something, and so then they were missing elements of it and how to do so. It was just matching those techniques and how we wanted to move people. And so it's a 38-minute piece. You're in VR for about 45 minutes. So the idea of how long do you need to be standing up, when do you sit, how do we do this, how we do that bit, then stand up, when do you move, when do you really move? All those little things are just kind of doing all these elements that just comes from trying and testing and seeing how things were taking us to it. So yeah. It wasn't easy.
A living Rubik's Cube. I love that analogy. And in that vein as well, and you said it was kind of living in your head, but was there maybe a particular catalyst that drove you to kind of put this idea out there and get this kind of collaboration, or is it just?
No, I was very interested in the idea of loss. The loss of innocence, the loss of a loved one, the loss of childhood. There's all these losses that accumulate in your life. And so when we looked at it, we realized that the dementia and Alzheimer's disease, where where you actually lose everything and you lose it forever. And so that kind of became our car in a certain way. And then I needed a driver, and then so we were able to slot that story within it, and that allowed me to touch different moments. And that's why I always say that the audience has a different climax or a poignant moment that the person is going through in the headset. The person in the headset has a completely different moment where they just go, and you can tell because their body just changes. Mm-hmm. And that something has just hit them. It usually tends to be around the same period, whereas an audience member, it happens a little bit later in the story.
Is there a particular way you choose your interactor?
Usually, as of right now, Venice was you needed to get the ticket. Rain Dance, you needed to get the ticket. For Amsterdam, we picked 3 good friends of mine, only because we knew that it was going to be such a big space that you need to be very careful to not nauseate anybody. Then for New York, you had to buy the ticket. And then when we got to Luxembourg, you had to buy the ticket. So it's literally, I don't pick anybody. It's whoever wants to go in there. It's their choice.
Yeah, it seems like such a kind of a lot to take on.
But I love it because there's so many people that have come and seen it that have never been in VR, and then they go, I want to be in. Like that's the first taste of, oh, that looks like something I might want to try.
Another question I had, you mentioned a bit about kind of Wes Anderson, Peter Greenberg, these film references of surrealism and that kind of thing. Is there, do you find that the medium of VR lends itself to that? Because you also have this audience that's living kind of in reality. So how does surrealism, function?
I mean, if you look at any of my paintings, I learned how to paint as a surrealist, and so this idea of the variations. There's a beautiful some beautiful paintings by Jose Clemente Orozco, who's one of my favorites, and him and Cicados used to stand in the places where they were painting, and they would understand their presence to that space. And then based on that, they will paint around it because they knew what your movement was going to be and what the movement of the pictures needed to be. And so therefore you needed to understand your relationship mathematically to all of that. And in a way, it's very similar to the way that we're working is I understand where you're going to be, how you're going to try things. I'm going to push you without actually showing you where I want to guide you to go and do elements. But also because I'm, I conduct the piece live, which means I'm able to give more time to somebody. I'm able to switch something. I'm able to go into the next scene. I'm able to raise the violins or hold on to the voiceover. So I'm constantly reacting to the interactor, And so, and all I'm looking at is this screen. I'm seeing that and this, and I'm seeing how we're looking at it, how we're involving them. And it's all about this beautiful communication. I always say that as a company, we perform to the interactor. But once the interactor is in place, he becomes one of us and we perform to the audience.
So it is kind of this surrealist impulse that it's driven by. That's very interesting. And I also picked out something else that you said when in the intro video that you sent to Lumen, where you said that the story is now king, not the technology. And I just wondered if you could comment on that further and how kind of technology functions for you.
It's if you look at anything in my studio and the way that I work, I come from painting. I come from telling stories from one single frame, And so how I get to create that piece, is literally you shouldn't give a crap about it, It should be completely hidden to you. You shouldn't know that is AI or that is this or that. You shouldn't, because that's not, I don't want you to be looking at the piece and trying to figure out, although some people try to do that, and that's fine. I'm one of those people that tries to do that. I want you to get involved in the story. I want you to be so involved in the story that all of a sudden you don't realize how I was doing things, that you're completely overtaken by it. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Everything that we're doing, I don't care if you give me the coolest technology in the world. If the story is shit, you're gonna walk away knowing that the story was shit, And so, as much cool, you can go, that was amazing. Like, yeah. How was that? Was shit. How many movies have you walked away? How many pieces of theater? How many pieces have you seen that the technology is actually the piece? How many pieces you've seen that, they've thrown this and done that and done that and done that, like, oh my God, like that sounds amazing. And then you watch the piece and you go, burrito? Because there's no understanding. It gets lost, And at the end of the day, as an artist, the most important thing you're trying to do is you're trying to generate an emotion in people. And you're trying to make them go away with something. And so that's why I said the story is king. Everything that we do is to serve the story. Some of the decisions that I had to make, taking away the trackers, that's a decision because it doesn't serve the story, And so I needed to become I was almost like the traffic cop of looking at things and going, does that work? No, it doesn't. Okay, go away. That works. Yes, it works. Keep on going through. And there's things that I will let through and then eventually go, oh, you know what? Yeah, bring that back. Let's try it again. Yeah, no, actually cut it out. When you're talking about so many different disciplines working together, someone has to understand where does each one take their relevance and at which moment you need to maybe take some delicacies out of the visuals, because the violin is actually going to give you that feel, or the voiceover is going to fill in the blanks of that little thing that you haven't had the time to do or you don't want to do over there, because then there's a moment where you're getting too much information and therefore you won't process anything, this whole idea of waking up in the morning, you have a to-do list that is that big and you go, I don't even know where to start. It's like, well, you can start from the top, but there's so much stuff to do that you don't know where to go to. It's kind of the same thing. I need to make sure that every single element has that importance. You know, there's a moment in The Flower where Weston, who composed the music, composed it in a way, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, it sounds correct, but it's wrong. He was like, what do you mean? It's like, slow it down, do like half tempo of everything. So he's like, all right, so half tempo it. And I was like, oh, I think the pitch is too high. Bring it down 1 octave. He's like, which bit? The violins and the cellos. And then brother was like, no, not yet. Bring it another octave. Okay, that sounds a little bit better. You know what? Bring the cello 2 more octaves down. He was like, that makes no sense. Like, technically, that makes no sense. That should not work. And I was like, just try it. And then he put it in there, and we looked at it, and the dissonance that it created with the look and feel of The Flower, the smell, and what we're trying to convey worked really well. You know, there's this whole thing of how long does music need to play before I send the voice? You know, how many times do I sit with my voiceover, and as soon as they're about to come, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, you know, and I'm holding, and it's like a race horse. It's just waiting to come in, and I'm like, I'm gonna hold it, I'm gonna hold it, I'm gonna hold it, I'm gonna hold it, and then when I can see it's about to explode, I go, all right, go. You know, and other times I'm like, we're about to come into the scene, we're going there, and I go, go, and I catch them in that moment. It's just like, and it just gives the performance a completely different feel, you know, because you're reacting to the story. You're trying to make that story very varied to people, and you want them to feel that. You want them to feel special.
They keep turning the Rubik's Cube all the time.
How many squeezes can you give it? Don't know yet.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really great. I have one final question. And all it is what do you see to be the future of Sator Studios and your own art practice? What's next after this?
I mean, hopefully the next thing is we're going on tour, but you know, if
of course, yeah.
You can't see my walls, but there's 7 pieces that I'm writing right now on my walls. I have another 3 in my notebook. And that's just us, you know, that's not even commissions that we're taking for other outside work that we're doing at the moment. I think that it's as we all know, it's going to be tricky to see where we land after this, but I feel very positive about some of the changes that have happened. I feel very positive about the outcome and the way that people are looking at art. You know, I think that one thing that all this pandemic has done is giving us a time to sit back and appreciate some of the things that we didn't appreciate before. You know, I will raise my hand to be one of them. You know, I used to take over 100 flights every single year and be on a plane and be in a hotel and being here and being there, and you know, I was never present. And all of a sudden I've become very present with what I'm doing, and allowing a lot of what was originally seen as geeky technologies for artsy people to finally have a moment where people are realizing that this is not just a bunch of geeks trying to put things together. We're true artists that are using technology to bring something new. We're using a way of bringing humanity to technology, and that's the important thing of what's coming up from us.
And I think on that note, I think the Lumen exhibition, the art of it too is something to look at too. So I would encourage everyone to go and look at Tupac's studio there, or pavilion, sorry. I've shared the link in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us live today. It was really nice to talk to you and to hear more. So bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.